everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We have an exciting presentation to share with you this collaboration that we did with a number of universities in Canada. The main sponsor was University of Ottowa, which is the largest bilingual university in the world. But we also work with professors from the University of Laval and Quebec. This is a project that brings together XR to build immersive experience and AI for tailoring and personalization to deploy training the trainers, teaching the teachers on continuing education. And we do this at scale. We will show you how you heard from Ori and the other speakers, XR loves AI. We will give you an example of how this immersive experience builds muscle memories and allow for this critical thinking while allowing for tailoring and personalization of this experience based on culture, based on context, based on how every person has different learning styles.
Amazing. So what I'll go over really quickly is what you can expect from our very minute session. So first we'll go over some introductions of myself and Adrian. Then we'll kind of start at the end, showcasing what we ultimately built with the University of Ottawa, so that you have that in your mind's eye as we talk you through the challenges that began this project in the first place that we were meant to address, as well as the development process of building the solution before looking to the future of what's next of it all.
So my background spans between industry and academia. I have a master's, PhD, and postdoc from 3 different universities. I was on a delusion I would become a professor of computer science, and I received that offer after graduating from University of British Columbia. However, I chose to stay in the industry at that time because electronic arts provided with an amazing opportunity. These devices were coming out. And then we thought, like, mobile is going to go places. Nobody built any experiences on mobile devices. Electronic Arts was doing this entertainment experience on big screen TV, so we tried to figure out what this new mobile revolution is going to be about. So I had the opportunity to build the mobile gaming division for Electronic Arts. Why is this relevant? Because right now, there is a new revolution taking place, which is basically the spatial revolution and how to go from 2D and then pretty much static interfaces to 3D social collaborative interfaces. The other relevant aspect is that I work and been building this 3D immersive experience for over 25 years. Started with Ubisoft in Europe and then going to work for Electronic Arts. Clients include Nintendo, Pokemon, and BioWare. So this was for gaming and entertainment. Today, we'll explain how XR and AI is used actually to solve real problems in the industry.
Excellent. And so I'll slightly introduce Mirella. She was the professor that we worked with at the University of Ottawa. She would have loved to be here today, but due to delays from all the way back in Canada, wasn't able to make it. But she was basically our expert in education and pedagogical best practices. She dictated, and along with her professors in other universities, what this entire experience would look like, and provided that expertise that we crafted into the virtual reality experience. And for myself, my name is Isabella, and speaking of revolutions, I come more from the artificial intelligence side of things. I've worked in consumer and AI experiences and products, throughout my entire career before coming to Aequilibrium from Microsoft AI, and now being able to integrate that with the virtual reality of it all is what really gets me out of bed every day, and I'm really excited to share it with you all. Excellent. Now, like I said about sharing, we would like to show you a brief video demo of essentially what we ended up building in order to showcase ClasseXR. That is the virtual reality immersive experience for, as Adrian mentioned before, teachers who have been out in the field, been teaching our young and our children, but as you'll be able to see later, there's always more to learn, and this is meant to showcase and give them that opportunity to improve their own skills. And so it'll begin with a person actually in the simulation tasked with presenting an assignment to their classroom of students and then handling incidents as they arise throughout the various simulations.
For the next exercise, we started a new writing project that I talked about last week. You know, our school is committed to protecting the environment, and the principal thought it would be great to have your ideas to contribute to that. So here's what I suggest to you. You are going to write an opinion letter addressed to the school director. In your letter, you will propose a plan to make our school more ecological. I would like you to propose 3 ideas and explain for each one why you think it is a good solution to protect our environment.
Now, the idea here is for teachers to be able to exercise classroom management and decision-making skills throughout the several incidents and scenes. As you're able to observe, there is a number of different students, with everything being 3D modeled and highly interactable, and even the students themselves are driven by AI or artificial intelligence, so they can respond dynamically with different accents, behaviors, etc. And so in this instance, you'll see a student throwing a paper ball at another, disrupting the classroom, and you are tasked with handling that situation in a way that is the most empathetic and allows for their own autonomy and respects their independence. So first, they'll be tasked with selecting the right way to handle the situation and then actually put it into action.
Samuel, Yusuf, and Jade, I have to lower your chips into the yellow for your behavior. Can you explain to me what is happening?
It's not fair. I threw them a ball of paper to make them stop talking.
Yusuf and I finished our plan. It's boring. It's always the same subjects: writing, reading, science. Yeah, it's so boring. Always the same topics.
And as you'll notice, after you make the decisions that you so choose, you're then inquired about why. Why was that important? Or why was it the best way to go about making that decision? And if that wasn't the right decision, then you'll also get that type of feedback.
What do we do when our friend's behavior bothers us in class?
I must warn you, and you will intervene. I apologize for throwing away the ball of paper.
Amazing. And as you can tell, different students, given the diversity and complexity of classrooms, especially in Canada, have different accents, different motivations, even appearances, and all of that is reflected. And like I mentioned before, there's also a reflection in terms of a quiz so that you're able to understand and truly internalize why the best course of action is perhaps the one you took or maybe didn't take, and where to go from there in future. And this is all translated in terms of your performance at the end with all the analytics and metrics to overall assess and evaluate your general performance in this simulation each and every time. And there's also a degree of interactability with objects where you're able to interface with the entire classroom.
Yes, thank you. It helps me a lot to concentrate when there is too much noise.
And so you'll see in the background here, you'll be able to track and understand the number of incidents or students that you still need to help and the progress you've made overall. And as you can see here, you actually interact with objects in the space, including these headphones for the student who's overstimulated and requires this as a learning aid. And there are a number of different incidents and scenarios within this exact classroom environment, just like a teacher would experience in their everyday life throughout teaching an assignment or an overall education space. Now that you have an understanding of what that looked like in real life, wanted to kind of introduce it to you. Then that is welcome to ClasseXR. The idea is we're simulating real-world classroom environments so that teachers, like I mentioned before, develop those classroom management and decision-making skills. And we also wanted to make it highly accessible. So both on the Oculus headsets, as well as a 360-degree room called the Igloo, which is an entire expanse of space dedicated to these immersive environments that also is really conducive to multiplayer activities.
Have anybody had experience in these 3D environments outside of headsets? Obviously, there is augmented and mixed reality, but have you been in this 3D environment in which, as a group, you can share this experience? So I can tell you that in Igloo, it was the first time that I participated into this. It's a room like this. It literally looks like an Igloo, and you immerse 360 into this classroom experience. In addition to having the 3D sound, the characters are realistic in terms of size. I remember I wanted to leave halfway through the interactions, and I keep trying to open one of the doors where it's actually just a projection. The door was actually in the other location, but everything looks so realistic, including the outdoors. You know, you can change. Is it at night? Is it in the evening? Is it raining? What kind of noise and background you have in here? So there are two different interfaces. Obviously, one is personal. It can be located anywhere in the world and multiple people can participate, or it's a shared experience into a 3D environment like that. So with AI and automation, a lot of people are concerned that their job are going to be displaced, that there is a permanent need for them to be upskilled. This happens for the teachers, because we all know that whatever students are studying today, that's not going to be suitable for the jobs 10 years from now. So ability to learn would be one of the best skills that other universities or employers can do for their staff and for their students. But how can you train the teachers? Because whatever they used to do, the old methods of teaching, the so-called PowerPoint presentations, the transparent slides, are no longer sufficient. So how do you take into account the fact that we have different type of needs, that we all learn differently, some visually, some auditive. So instead of having the same type of training scenarios, you watch a video that was created independent to you, everybody has the same type of interactions, how do I fit into this? And for example, for some of these training scenarios, not only, as you saw there from the characters, you represent the diversity. You can build personas with different backgrounds and characters, but also you enable these interactions to be specific to you with the vast amount of data that's produced through these 3D interactions.
And the idea to make this actually actionable, to address the challenges that Adrian mentioned and Mirella posited to us in the first place, we were tasked with the following. That is, create an immersive learning platform for teachers to learn and practice these new classroom management and pedagogical skills that were being researched and updated well after these teachers entered the classroom, but they weren't given that type of opportunity to practice and learn themselves. Well, this is that opportunity. So the idea is we had 3 main asks. The first of which was obviously an immersive experience with the 360-degree accessibility, both in MetaQuest headsets as well as the Igloo room. Then also they wanted to be this pedagogical practice of reflect, act, reflect. It was essentially a cycle where not only did you choose to make an action, but then you were ensuring that you were actually internalizing the reason behind it so that you had better retention, both in terms of when you made a mistake, but also when you did the right thing. And finally, the idea was to create 2 scenarios, both 45 minutes, in order to allow for a truly immersive and durable experience that covered a grand expanse of what a teacher typically would experience in the classroom. And so now I'm going to build more into what the development process was like from the get-go all the way to the final launch.
Before we dive into this, are you familiar with this type of fishbowl experiments or one-way mirror in which you have to do a task in a classroom or in some sort of an environment and a bunch of people observe you and then you feel like you're going to be rated? Sometimes these people in this environment that are actors and they need to pretend that they're upset or somebody's taking a fight and so on. So it's hard to reproduce and you're obviously feeling judged. I have a colleague who, as a teacher, had to pass this type of test and exam, and he was mentioning, I had butterfly, I couldn't sleep that night, and I totally flunked the test. And there is no replay, there is no redo. That was your best performance, you worked so hard, and it's like, oh, I could do so much better than this. With this type of experience, you can always go back, and you don't feel like you're being on the spot and assessed, and if you make a mistake, you have a chance to do it again.
Absolutely, and to build that solution and to allow for that platform to be had, we had 3 main components. The first step and one of the biggest efforts was to model not only the non-playable characters, that is the students, in terms of their animations, but also the environment for fully well-rendered, everything from the lighting to the drawers being interactable. We also had AI-driven simulation and feedback. So not only were these little students responsive and driven by artificial intelligence, given different profiles, behaviors, personalities, accents, but at the same time, as the teacher was going throughout this simulation, their responses, their actions were also being recorded, and then they were receiving a type of feedback dashboard at the end of their performance to gauge everything from how empathetic they were to professional against the learning objectives that Mirella and her team dictated. And finally, the multi-format access that we mentioned before, both for the MetaQuest 3D headsets availability as well as for it to be conducive to the Igloo's 360-degree room. To speak more about the modeling process, suffice to say, it was quite intense. But it was super thorough because we wanted to be able to reflect the complexities of the classrooms of today. So we had everything from different personalities for each and every student and each and every incident to their appearance, even their gestures and animations were thoroughly developed, and as well as their tone of voice, accents that were reflective, again, of the diversity of a Canadian classroom. And even the classroom itself had interactable objects, even the ambiance and the noises were all carefully carefully planned to assert that type of realism that you can only really get in virtual reality, or of course the real world itself. As well as being able to showcase the AI-driven simulation feedback. This is one of the feedback experiences, and the Igloo room that you can see here. And the other element is because University of Ottawa is the largest bilingual university in the world, we also offered this in French and to ensure that all types of individuals were addressed. And finally, in terms of multi-format access, we wanted to ensure that with the headsets, it was truly more individualized. It allowed for internal reflection and decision-making skills that were important to an individual, especially with the psychologically safe space that Adrian was mentioning before. But we also wanted to allow for collaborative decision-making as well. So that's where the Igloo afforded a lot more group decision-making, discussions, and more of the classroom environment that we're used to ensure that the full 360 experience, not just virtually and visually, but also in terms of a learner's own preferences were addressed. And the impact of this was really, really phenomenal. So we were able to address the three key domains that the professor, Mirella, as well as her colleagues, dictated was the most important. That is on the cognitive, emotional, and practical domains. So in terms of the cognitive element, the fact that people were able to have stronger observational skills, decision-making opportunities, and had marked progress over this training simulation was a grand success. On top of that, the fact that teachers, both in their actions and also how they express themselves, were more confident, able to display more emotions and indicators of empathy, as well as presence and resilience, also translated, obviously, to how they taught their real classrooms. And finally, the fact that there was a lot of practical information, too, to showcase that this repeatable exposure really accelerated their ability to take this learning of 45 minutes and immediately translate it to the classroom the next day. And the overall remarks were also very, very positive, saying that ClasseXR was the missing step between basically theory and practicum.
So when we collaborated with University of Ottowa, that was the first foray into immersive technology. So they share, this is the vision, this is the experience. We do not have an XR or an AI strategy. How can we create the most compelling experience? And then they knew that success sells. If we do this right, there's an opportunity to expand it across other departments within the University of Ottawa, but also, because this is done with public funding, with other schools in Canada. There are programs, for example, to do VR for training in healthcare, and we have a solution in that space too. The idea here was what is possible today, how do we do a good start? So instead of using the proof of concept, this is more a proof of value. So demonstrated that this makes an impact for both professors and for actually the teachers who are actually the end users for these type of experiences. When we started, think about the analogy in terms of training in VR is kind of moving from training, think about a book, a manual, to watching a movie. So somebody needs to translate that book into an actual scenario, a script, that you actually have these characters, these interactions, the people throwing the ball at each other, this person, being on the spectrum and losing patience, and some people are affected by loud noises and so on. So how do you create these characters, their behaviors? So we use that to model, using AI to model personalities. Then we're looking into the faces, these characters, how do they look, how do they behave? So getting this context and modeling this environment was the first step. So building the first 45-minute scenario took us about 2 months. But now, it's like on a movie set, you already have the actors, you have the costumes, you have the environment. So for the second scenario, we built that in less than 2 weeks. So it definitely scales to do this, at a large volume, because there are definitely benefits from doing this at scale. How can this be extended? This was the first stage. We demonstrated the value. We mentioned this multi-language support. Initially, the experience was in French. Not only we had to find people, characters, voices, in that particular age category, but we also wanted to recognize different cultures, different backgrounds. The other aspect is we want to integrate this with the learning and management systems that tracking individual performance. And then we're looking into other solutions, not just for higher education, but also training in other domains. One example is the training academy that's focused on other domains such as healthcare, finance, and public sector. In particular, in Europe, we are leading this program, a 3-year, 10 million euros funded project to use XR and AI to do training in the healthcare at scale. It's a collaboration with Turkey, with Portugal, Slovenia, and obviously Canada, and it makes a big impact into this very tangible problem that's happening globally. So now, we would like to invite you, if you want to learn more about this, about the experience that we're using, how we put together XR and AI to create immersive and personalized experiences and skills, please join us at booth 214. If you want to connect with us, we're available at the booth, as I mentioned, also on LinkedIn, and then this is Isabella's email address as a way to stay in touch. And if we have a few more minutes, we can also take a few questions.
Thank you so much for your time.
If you want to go to the next slide, too.
Any questions? Yeah, sorry.
Okay. Good afternoon, I think. In traditional teacher training, there is an element of placement. So teachers go out and teach in the real world rather than being trained solely. Do you take that feedback from those who go out in that placement to actually enhance your software development?
Yeah, absolutely. I would actually even argue that that serves almost as a supplement to being able to go out in the real world. So it's almost like an iterative cycle. Not only are we able to observe and model how individuals and teachers in placements typically interact, what their greatest pitfalls are, maybe their biggest lessons learned that they maybe wish they hadn't learned in real life, and then translate that to the virtual reality simulation experience in order to ensure that, for example, the first time a student has a tantrum or an accident, that is actually done first in virtual reality, so when they actually do have those in live placements, they're actually a lot more prepared and say, like, I've seen this before. So that it allows them to be a lot more confident and greater success rate so that they can stay either in those placements or be a lot more confident when they're going off and released into the wild, so to speak.
Thank you.
And you can also use that to modulate the level of complexity. So for example, the teacher is like a general and he says all these classes are group projects, and you try to figure out which one is likely to produce more havoc, more risk, more damage, somebody can get injured. So initially you may have one single group that you have to supervise. Then you may have multiple that you have to choose for, and then figure out how much time you spend to actually address the different situations on the floor.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Yes, thank you. How long do you play this game, or how much levels are there?
So in this interaction, there are two scenarios, and they're both 45 minutes long. But the idea is that we also have like shorter scenarios or instances, like Adrian mentioned before, to differing complexities. So depending on how, for example, the teacher performed in the first situation or iteration of the 45 minutes, when they get that feedback of their weaknesses, maybe some areas that they could work on, the next time they do that exact same scenario, the artificial intelligence engine that created the scenario in the first place is able to tweak that situation so that they're able to better address maybe where their weaknesses were in the first place. So even though technically the gameplay or the experience is the same when they enter, the exact detailings of what goes on in the interaction is different each time. So functionally, you could say that it's a new experience each and every time you enter into the space.
So it's a decision tree. Depending on which branch you're going in, you can have a different experience from other teachers.
Right. Thank you so much, Isabella and Adrian, for that wonderful, insightful presentation.
Thank you.